We are live streaming from Defund Fest in Montreal today. I'm here with Jay Salos Carter. Could you please tell me about this event?
Hi, yeah, thanks for being here. We're here today at Festival Defund la Police. The thing I always like to say about this is that it's not like a demonstration or a manif, it's a celebration of the amazing community work that's being done, the amazing work that individuals are doing to sort of reimagine what community safety looks like and what public safety looks like in our communities.
Thank you so much. Can you please tell me your role in Defund and organizing this event?
Yeah, so for the past couple of years, I've participated in different events and different demonstrations with the coalition. And for this event, I'm one of the volunteers that has been helping to organize some of the logistics and put together some of the events that we'll be seeing today.
Could you tell us how long has this event been in the works?
So the first event was last year, September 9th last year. And I think after that we knew that we wanted to do a second edition. Probably like the talk started 2 or 3 months ago is when we actually started like seriously talking about it. And the planning would have started as well like 2 months ago, thereabouts. So there's been a bit of work in it like over the past couple months.
Thank you so much. Why would you say it's important to host educational events on policing and the negative effects policing holds in our society?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think these types of events, these types of informational events, and these types of events that offer community perspectives on safety and community perspectives on justice are so important because oftentimes I think what happens is that individuals in our society and individuals in our communities have a disconnect between what they perceive as punitive forms of justice and the effects that has and what is actually happening. You know, there's this idea that our communities can't be safe unless we have punishment, unless we have like this type of thing happening in our society. But time and time again, over the years, when you look at the impacts of punitive justice, it's negative, it's negative, it's negative. We see great rates of recidivism. We see people that are blocked out of career paths, that are blocked out of housing opportunities and put into situations where sometimes there's no other option than to take like unsavory paths, you know, to take paths that are unsafe for them and unsafe for the communities. And so really these types of events are important both to highlight the disconnect between what we think is happening with punitive forms of policing and what actually is happening, but also to give an opportunity to highlight what community-centered justice can look like and what transformative justice can look like and what approaches to harm reduction can look like in our society and the effects that those can have on safety in our communities.
Thank you so much for this answer. What significance does this event have in bringing people together to educate them on restructuring the power police are given in our society?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think when we think about like the importance and like the impact that this type of event has, like one of the things that I'm most excited about is that, you know, there are already so many people, there are already so many organizations that are giving their time, they're giving their effort, and they're giving like, you know, their livelihood to seeing these alternatives to punitive policing take place. That could mean working for minimum wage, that could mean working off the clock and volunteering their time, that could mean purchasing supplies, giving their homes, you know, to others without, you know, any recognition sometimes. Like it's a very thankless work it can be sometimes. And so I think what's so great about this event and what's so great about having community members and organizations that have been doing this work for decades in many cases, especially here in Little Burgundy, and but I'll come back to that, is that we can celebrate those people. We can celebrate those individuals and those organizations that have been doing this work. And this year we're based in Little Burgundy, and I'm so excited that one of our first events is actually going to be on the history of community initiatives and policing and public safety in Little Burgundy since the 1980s onward to the present. And so we're really going to have an opportunity to see some of those alternative narratives that aren't always given the light of day in the common discourse.
So the city aims to reach a workforce of 4,793 police officers by 2025. What do you think of Montreal pushing to have more police on our streets?
So when we talk about putting more police on the streets, there's a lot of nuances to that. One of the first things I'll bring up is that when we look at the municipal budget for this year in Montreal, we're looking at an enormous number. we're looking at over 20%, close to 20% of our municipal funds are going into policing-oriented initiatives. When we look at community-centered funding, and not all of this is going to organizations or individuals that are working on the ground, but when we look at community-centered initiatives, it's a lower number. It's closer to 4 to 6%. And when we see the effectiveness of these types of methods that I spoke about earlier with recidivism rates and with blocking people out of career opportunities and housing opportunities, we're causing more harm. And the more money we put into that and the more money we take away from our communities, the more harm we're actually causing to the most vulnerable populations. So, I can't stress enough, like any initiative that puts more money into policing or punitive-oriented justice, I should say, is money that's being taken away from our communities and harm that is being done to our most vulnerable populations.
Perfect. Last question. What can Montrealers do to question policing in our society?
So that's a difficult question. There's a couple things. One would be show up for some of the events the coalition is hosting. Oftentimes we'll go to the city council and stage a series of questions there, for example. Or for the more diligent, letter writers, you can write to your city council. These things do have an impact. Montreal has metropolitan city status. They have a little bit more power than other municipalities do to enact certain initiatives around these types of things. So you can write to your city councilors, you can get involved in community events, or volunteer at organizations that are doing this type of work on the ground. Off the top of my head, those are some things to get involved. And, try to be educated about what's happening, there's so much propaganda out there. I recognize this can be a harder thing to do, but be aware of alternative narratives.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate you giving us your time.
Thank you, Maud. I appreciate you being here.
Perfect. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you. Could you please introduce yourself, your name, and your role with Defund the Police?
My name is Scott. I am a volunteer in the organization team of Defund Fest. I'm a student at Concordia. I'm second-year student at Concordia in Community, Public Affairs, and Policy Studies.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So Projet Montréal is often branded as a progressive municipal party, but police budgets have ballooned since they've been in power. Why is increasing police budgets not a progressive act?
That is a good question. We can just look at the consequences that it has had on communities, and I feel like oftentimes we just see raising the police budget as the solution to solving crime, and clearly it just hasn't. I feel like the more progressive option should be to invest into the communities and give them money to let them decide what they actually need, because they're the ones who know what they need. And I feel like this top-down approach of policing does not solve the issues that the communities are facing. I feel like we should take a more grassroots approach, more bottoms-up approach to ask from the communities what they need, and not only putting that label onto them, but also helping them in that realization. Because I feel like just telling them this is what you need, so we're going to put more police officers in your communities and that's going to solve everything, it would be great. It's unrealistic because it hasn't worked. And I feel like if we realized that it hadn't worked, then maybe we could actually solve the issues. But I feel like clearly there's that alliance between political organizations and the police and giving them more funding. But I just feel like, especially as someone who comes from Montreal, that giving the police more money has not bettered the situation in those neighborhoods. And the thing is, I feel like oftentimes they want to excuse that the fact that there's more and more crime as time goes on. They want to use that as an excuse to raise the police budget, but the thing is, you are raising the police budget and the crime rate is still not changing. Then what is the solution? More funding? I don't think so.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that answer. Next question. Sorry, give me 1 second.
No worries.
I lost the document. Okay, give me just 1 minute. Okay. I accidentally quit the thing, but I found it again. Okay. So thank you again for that answer. Why is it important? Why is it important to provide Montrealers with the education of the harms of policing?
I feel like, especially with the fact that Montreal is a very diverse city, it's important to know how different communities of Montreal are affected by the police. Because we have a lot of Indigenous people, we have a lot of Black people, we have a lot of queer people who are impacted by the police and their mistreatment. Because, as we all know, I guess now, there is racism in police, there is discrimination in police, and while people know that this is true, they don't necessarily know the extent of it, and they don't know how it manifests. And I feel like it is important for people of all communities to know how it affects their communities, but also the other ones to know the realities of different types of Montrealers.
Perfect. What are the alternatives to policing that are currently available in Montreal?
Like we've had a lot of people presenting today about how their work impacts communities, and I feel like if we actually look at the different community organizations in the city and outside of the city as well, we could find out that there are a lot of solutions to preventing crime, but also to responding to it, and also that this is not the only things that the police do. Like especially with the response of people in mental health crises, oftentimes the police is sent to those cases and they don't know how to react to them. So we have people who are trained in the city, in the country, to respond to those situations. And I feel like if we put more funding into those community organizations and these professionals, it would be a better response all around to issues that a lot of people face in Montreal.
Thank you so much. Last question. What alternatives do you think policing should be made available in Montreal?
That's interesting. I don't necessarily know if I have a response to that, because at the end of the day, I don't think that there is one individual who has all the answers to solve policing by tomorrow. And I feel like as a collective, we share knowledge, which is why I'm here. I'm here to learn as well. We are finding out a lot of things as we're going, but I do know that I do believe that a lot of people have the knowledge better than me, because at the end of the day, I'm just a student here volunteering. But I just want people to be confident in the knowledge that is shared in the city and in the country around community organizations and everything. We often see them as not less valuable, but less professional, to have less knowledge than the police, and this is why we give them the money. But oftentimes, people in the community know better than the people who are working in big organizations like the SPVM. So I feel like if we recognize the knowledge that people on the field had, this would just be a good start.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. If you could first tell us your name
Sure.
and your role with Defund La Police.
Okay, so my name is Jessica Quijano, Quijano. I'm a member, one of the co-founders of the Coalition to Defund the Police. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. What made you begin to involve yourself in activism, challenging police budgets and power police hold in our society?
Well, I worked for a long time as a street outreach worker, a lot with the homelessness community, sex workers, most recently the Indigenous homeless community. So I've seen police and their work and that kind of work, and so I knew how much harm that police can do. And I was just really interested in, we wanted to start something to actually address the root causes of a lot of the issues that we see.
Thank you so much. Were you surprised the police budget has grown so much under Projet Montréal? leading to a record 787 million dollars budget for 2020.
I mean, it's so disheartening. I'm not really surprised. I feel like our movement has affected it, and unfortunately, it's in the opposite way. But however, I think that it started becoming defunding, started becoming part of the mainstream discussion. So I feel that sometimes that's a reaction to when a movement is gaining, but it's just really, really, really disappointing.
Thank you. Where could this funding go towards to specifically address crime at its roots?
I would say that housing is like number one. We're in a housing crisis. Places where people can heal, detox centers, after-school programs, sports, art. Like anywhere where there's like we know we have the solutions out there, and communities can decide what are the needs within their community, because we know that poverty is people that experience more poverty live in more high crimes, and they experience more violence. So it would be to invest that money into that.
Thank you so much for that answer. I understand your work involves gender advocacy. What barriers do gender diverse people have with experiencing policing in Montreal?
Definitely, like the trans queer community experience a lot of discrimination, just being misgendered or just being refused to, like, if you get arrested and you're trans, you'll be put with the not the gender that you identify with, the gender that's like on your ID or your birth certificate. Just, homophobia, transphobia is very rampant within police, but I mean, we can say that all in society. So police are a reflection of society.
Perfect. Last question. Why is it important to question and restructure the power police hold in our society?
Well, I mean, if someone that wants to defund and eventually abolish the police, because I think that we can prevent a lot of the violence that we see in society. And it's defunding for me is that we can't reform that system that's actually working the way it was supposed to be. So it's rooted in colonialism and racism. It's always been about protecting property, not people. So why would we want to reform a system that is working exactly the way it's supposed to be? And so just to completely find a new system, envision, and I'm very confident that communities are able to do that because it's at the core of who we are.